You save up to go on a Disney vacation. You save up
for the ring
to buy a ring as if it is a literal representation of the love and your ability to provide and to partner with whoever this person is. And it's all just made up.
Yes.
It's all just made up. You don't actually have to do any of this stuff. Welcome to the Rich and Regular podcast, where we explore life at the intersection of money. I'm Julian.
And I'm Kirsten, and today we're back with another quick dip episode, and we're talking about Disney, diamonds, and CEOs, and asking what happens when industries lose their grip on us.
You could have put another D in there.
I know. I couldn't think
Disney,
of one.
Diamonds, and
Top dogs.
D's CEOs.
D CEOs. But before we dive in, I want to shout out to, here's a D, The Explorer, who left a 5-star review that said, "Love it. I recently discovered this page and I can't stop listening. Very practical and relatable financial advice." Thank you, Dot.
I appreciate that.
Continuing with the D's.
Yes.
Now, there's a couple reasons I wanted to talk about this topic, because I'm going to get on like my elder millennial boomer adjacent soapbox and say, once upon a time, certain things just made sense. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't the good old days, but if you had kids, you saved for Disney. If you wanted to impress somebody, you bought a diamond. If you worked hard, you trusted the right people would notice, right? You would eventually work your way up to be
work
CEO.
hard, go to school,
maybe
and
you can
everything.
Get on the fries. But what happens when none of that is true anymore?
Yeah.
I think that's what we're talking about today. Whether it's theme parks, corporate careers, even just engagement rings, all of this stuff was built on tradition, nostalgia, social expectations.
Yeah.
And right now, people are breaking away from those scripts, and it's happening really fast.
Yeah. There's a lot of that right now. And, I'm actually really excited about it because it feels like it's something that we can just all agree on.
I know,
and sometimes
right?
you have to wait for the data and you have to wait for the big shifts before you realize, oh, so it's not just us. Like, we're all kind of over these things, or we're just collectively starting to make different sets of decisions. And so I find that stuff to be really, really cool. But the other reason why is because it is in many ways, it's just kind of the way that my brain works, because I kind of went to school and studied marketing. And so for me, as you think about economics or finance, I tend to pay attention to some of the marketing shifts, because in many ways, that's a bit of a reflection of how people are thinking. They start making different behaviors. And I think this, to me, all three of those examples, it all is kind of like tied together. And I just personally find that stuff to be pretty interesting. So,
because you're an anarchist, low key.
Okay.
Like chaos and disruption of tradition, and
maybe that's it. So, all right, let me dive into Disney, because Disney is the thing, to your point, that is as American as American pie. And it's not it. It's not American pie. It's apple pie. Apple pie might as well just be rebranded as American pie. It really should be.
I mean, with our current president,
but
we
Disney,
got a Gulf of America. Why not have an American pie?
It is truly like it's a global brand, but obviously like it represents America, Americana, and to your point, the gold standard of family fun and broader media, like representation and stories and all that stuff, is what Disney essentially owns and represents. A big part of that is visiting Disney World, Disneyland. Have you been to both?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I've actually been to both.
Really?
Yeah, I have. I don't remember going to Disneyland. I think Disneyland is the one in Cali.
Yeah,
I don't remember
Japan or somewhere else.
Yeah, and then there's another one in Tokyo. But yeah, I've actually been to both. Anyway, Disney. So Wall Street Journal just posted an article or
scathing takedown.
Yeah,
article is nice.
Article is nice, but like it was basically saying like, it's ridiculously expensive. Like, we've now reached a point where it just absolutely is too expensive for the vast majority of people. I mean, it's like up there with some of these articles that you see every now and then around there only being like 2 or 3, cities in the US where rent has kept up with like, inflation or like wages or stuff like that. But like, this is where Disney is right now. And here's some data just to kind of help you wrap your head around it. I think if you're a family guy, or woman, like you can You've probably already experienced this, but you might be surprised to know if you are just starting out your families. The 4-day family of four trip to Disney now costs around $4,266. This is before food and transportation. What's most interesting is that this is up from $3,230, which was the average price around 5 years ago. And this is even after adjusting for inflation. What's particularly interesting about this is as you look at this huge increase in shift in pricing over the last 5 years, 80% of that is coming from new costs from things that used to be free, which is basically like combating all of the things that we already know are incredibly frustrating about the Disney experience. And what I mean by that is the ticket can cost X dollars, and then there's like the pass in front of
Mhm.
it. And it was like, well, why do you need the pass? Well, if you've ever been to Disney, you will mess around and spend a couple $100s on some tickets, and then you will spend 70 to 80% of that time just waiting in line to get on rides. You
Mhm.
won't be able to see anything. It's hot. It's uncomfortable. And so Disney said, you know what? Instead of actually making these lines more efficient, which I think they have tried to do that, but they were far more interested in saying, well, we'll just create a different line where a gold pass line or
Well, they've
levels
always
to it.
had different lines. It just used to be free. If you
Right.
could go in and like register early, I don't know,
Yes.
Disney adults will tell you how it used to be.
Yes.
But now they charge for it and it's
Yes.
not cheap. Like if you are trying to do the lightning lane or whatever it's called now, it costs up to 449 person a day.
Yeah.
But to your point, without it, you're waiting in line for an hour or more from one of the most popular rides.
Yeah.
And so families are facing this time for money trade off. They can either spend more money for a smoother experience or they can save money, but waste a whole bunch of time standing in lines.
I think for me, so not that I'm not particularly like impressed or like shocked by the $4,000 price tag, which basically is a little over $1,000 per person.
Before food
That's the
or
part that trips me out.
transportation.
Like that's before food. Like we haven't eaten anything. Like that does not include any food, any ice cream, any of the little lemonade popsicle
Don't
things.
want to meet a
It does
character.
not include the flight or whatever means that you are
The
using to
hotel.
get there, the hotel, none of that stuff. That's just the actual Disney experience. And it's interesting because I remember when we were just starting our family and, as we were thinking about it and we would tell people that we were going to Orlando, and that would be one of the first questions they would ask was, oh, are you going
You
to
doing
Disney?
Disney? And it's like,
It's like,
no.
no, no. And we did end up actually going, but like we knew it was just ridiculously expensive. And we were of the belief that, he was like he wasn't even really into Disney like that. He was like, I'm not like, I don't see it as this sort of mandatory thing that I have to do.
It was though for a while. Like
For a
when he
while,
was a
I do
toddler,
understand that
Disney cruisers were like set on you being a Disney cruiser
for
too. Like
sure.
they would talk about how much they paid and then they say it's absolutely worth it. And
Totally
it's like,
worth it.
what?
Yeah.
Like,
Lunch with Pluto. It was like,
well,
no.
no, it was more that like Disney cruises had adult amenities. So you could like drop your kid off and they're happy because it's Disney and that's their job. But then you could go drink. And it's like, yeah, but you can do that for a lot cheaper if you
Yeah.
just buy a plane ticket somewhere
Yeah.
and stay at a resort. Anyway, I completely understand what you're saying because on top of the stress of managing an itinerary, when you got a budget for like hidden costs, like I know we were shocked by the cost of food when we went to the park a couple years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and then avoiding debt, it kills the magic before you even get into the park.
It
That
does.
was our experience. Like it was hot that day, and it seemed like every family was just pissed off. Kids were crying. Parents were pissed off because the kids weren't having a great time. Nobody wants to stand in line. And the article, which by the way is called Even Disney is Worried About the High Cost of a Disney Vacation, said that 45% of the families who visited Disney went into debt to afford the trip.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where Disney's entire model depends on generational nostalgia. Parents who went as kids want to create that magic for their own children. But if this tradition breaks because it's just too dang expensive, it could mark the end of Disney's little dominance as the family vacation. And the question is, are you here for it? Like, are you ready to see a cornerstone of family and childhood and magic? I mean, Walt Disney in and of itself is like the gold
He
standard.
owns childhood. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even watching the Super Bowl, I had almost forgotten, because for a second I thought about that. I was like, oh, that's right. Like after every Super Bowl, there's probably representation from Disney.
Yeah. Going to
And
Disney
they
World.
have owned, a 10-second shoot at the end of every Super Bowl. And there was Jalen Hurts saying, I'm going to Disney World. I saw footage of him on the roller coaster.
Mhm.
So it did make me think of that. But going back to when we visited, you're not exaggerating. So for anyone that that would say like, "Oh, you're exaggerating," no, it looked like we were just surrounded by miserable people. And I will also say it was really interesting because we were looking at this like, why do people do this? I was
We only went because
legitimately
my parents insisted. Like
correct.
going back to generational nostalgia, we were taking a trip to Orlando. My
Yes,
sister-in-law is a Disney adult.
hardcore, hardcore.
And so my niece is a Disney kid.
Yep.
And so they insisted on going to the parks. But Bo was ready to go by lunchtime. He was over it.
We were all ready to go.
We were.
We just
We
had
actually did dip.
different expectations. We went back and enjoyed the lazy river at the hotel and said, "No, this is a vacation." But the point that I was making is that I was legitimately trying to find this magic that people speak of, and I just couldn't find it anywhere. The food was actually pretty good, better than I expected. The way that it was delivered and the way that they figured out ways to like create hot food and get it out to people was great. But you're still, I mean, you still feel like you're in like a giant lunch hall, and so you can't really get
Yeah.
past that. But the rides felt rickety. Things felt really dated. And I just kind of felt like, wow, they're really, really squeezing the juice out of that idea and that spirit of nostalgia. But I just have higher expectations in terms of cleanliness. And you know what? I shouldn't say
At that price
cleanliness.
point,
It's
it was clean,
it was
but
clean, but it's just like refurbished. It wasn't. It was in desperate need. It felt like it was in desperate need of an upgrade, and I
yeah.
felt like that just did not warrant the price tag. So all of that to say, these are some of the things that we've done to kind of combat that. Which I would start with what I just said, which is give yourself the permission to just be honest, and give yourself the right to push back and say, you know what, we're not interested. You don't have to do this. I know there are a lot of people who just can't wrap their head around pushing back against their parents or their other family
Or
members
their own
or
childhoods.
their own childhood, sort of pressure, wanting to recreate and take the same picture standing in front of Epcot like I did. I get it. I totally get it. Those things are incredible. But it's ridiculously expensive. And it's almost like a lavish wedding in a way,
Yeah.
where it's just so expensive for such a brief moment. And I'll also say, I remember when we were there, we've been to Orlando several times over the last couple of years. When it rains, it's like, yeah, there's no, oh, here's your money back. Or no,
Or
it
even
just
when it's hot,
rains.
there's nowhere to sit.
No.
Like that was our beef, where it's like, unless you're going into a restaurant or a
Yeah.
gift shop, there's no like air conditioned lounge to chill out in. You want me to stay all day in the sun, like in this ozone layer? Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. There's something about the nostalgia in 2025 that feels very manufactured. Like it's almost like an artificial sweetener kind
It
of
is.
flavor, where it's like if you're not consuming that on a regular basis, like you're not a Disney adult. It's a little weird. Like
Yeah.
it's just a little
For
off.
for the price tag, I would expect for every child to walk home with something like in their hand.
Right.
No, seriously, for the price tag, I would expect there to just be tons of people walking around giving samples of things, and here's a
That's
toy, and
real.
here's an
We
opportunity.
walked away with more at Costco. Like
No,
that was more
exactly.
experiential than Disney World.
Yeah, I just could. The value of the experience was not matching up to what I actually consumed,
Yeah.
and I didn't
Yeah.
even pay for it. And I was just like, "There's absolutely no way this is worth it." And I think that's what we're starting to see. With a
Yeah.
lot of people are finally saying, "You know what, this is a bit too much." And so, all of that to say, we're not coming up to the summer, but I know spring break is just around the corner for a lot of people.
That's exactly why I wanted to
this
talk
is
about
this
it.
is without question something I think you can just skip, and it's okay. So start thinking about new ideas, and you are not alone. Sometimes you gotta hear from somebody else to say thank you. I'm glad somebody said it. Skip Disney altogether. Like it's
Yes.
just not
And
worth it right now
honestly,
until they do something new, like a lot of things new, and bring those prices down.
the experience that your children need, because I know everybody's trying to give children experiences. The experiences that they need are actually inconvenient ones.
Yeah,
Take them on that road trip, take them on that long flight. Bo's most memorable vacations are the ones where we've encountered delays, sicknesses, we've gotten locked out of something, like something
adventure.
happened. It's adventure, because in their instant gratification world of iPad, like there's not much magic you can do
Hmm.
in real life when you got to wait in line. Like it doesn't happen. It's not giving what you think it's giving. So I agree. As you're planning out your spring breaks, your summer breaks, I know there's people that are dead set on Disney. I'm telling you, there are other activities that are just as meaningful, more low stress, and more financially sustainable because you can continue to do them than this.
Yeah. And you know what? This is the last thing I'll say with respect to Disney, which is sort of a hop off, but it's not just Disney. We're just focusing on Disney. I think the
Yeah,
same
because
is
they're in the
true.
news.
Yeah. It's the same is true for lots of things. Just give yourself an opportunity to pass the idea through that filter. It's like, am I really just holding on to nostalgia a little bit? Or should I just replace this idea, find something new, and save some money in the process? I think
Man.
that's what we're actually asking people to do. So,
Yeah.
all right.
Next topic.
Next topic, number
All
two.
right. So this is kind of related because if Disney's pricing strategy is breaking generational nostalgia for families,
Mhm.
then I think the constant churn of CEOs is breaking corporate nostalgia for employees, investors, and consumers.
Yeah, CEOs
And
are wilding right now.
wow, there's been a lot of news
This is
about
this is
CEOs
in a
right now.
direct response to this new administration. We called it, we said it would happen, but like there is a boldness or an emboldeness that I think a lot of leaders are taking on. It's interesting to see.
But
And
they're
so,
not staying. So what's interesting about CEOs right now is like, let me just back up a little bit because I like to think of CEOs as like the last of the company man. Like I'm not going to say a dying breed because that would be insensitive given the political violence facing CEOs right now. But they are a rare species. Like there are very few children today that say, I want to grow up and be like a CEO. No one's joining a company thinking I could be the CEO of this place for, at some point. And like that used to be a thing. But the statistics show that CEOs are not lasting. The turnover at the CEO role is at a 20-year high, with 34% of them leaving their position within 3 years. And the average tenure of a CEO has dropped to around 5 to 7 years. And again, this has been happening for like the last 10 years.
mhm,
On top of them turning over at such a high rate, they're also not doing like a great job. Business bankruptcies are up 40%, and they're on pace to be the highest since the financial crisis. If you've been watching the news, you've seen more nostalgic brands falling, whether it's Tupperware or Party City, TGI Fridays, Bed Bath and Beyond, all of these companies that we kind of grew up on
yeah,
dying. And then meanwhile, they're still being paid out the bleep, like out the butt. CEO pay hit a record high in 2023 with a median salary of $15.7 million. And that's the median salary. And so they don't stay, they're paid crazy. They don't necessarily do a great job. And then the consumer sentiment, because of all of those things, isn't very high. Like even if you look at the act against the healthcare CEO, the murder of the healthcare
mhm.
CEO, 41% of Gen Z feel like Luigi's act was justified. Like they're like, I get it. Like he's a bad guy. He's a villain. And so there's this like image thing that's happening with CEOs that's really interesting to watch.
It is interesting. It's also a little scary to your point because, obviously when we've gone to the extent we've gone vigilante style, people are basically in favor of it. It's giving French Revolution, in a lot of ways. It's giving, Middle Eastern sort of revolution in a lot of ways. And so that part I think is scary. I am paying a bit more attention to just the way that they are responding because you would have thought that they, and by they, I'm grouping them all together, not like they're all like on a group chat, but in a way,
They kind of
they
are.
are connected. They are a rare breed, all however many thousand of them. And, they are in many ways pushing back and fighting back because they're just tired. They feel like they're being beaten up. They feel like people don't really understand. They feel like they've got the weight of the world on their shoulder.
Mhm.
I kind of understand that standpoint. It is an impossible job, but I unfortunately am just a bit more, empathetic towards the everyday man and woman who are working hard and who actually do the work that many of these CEOs are taking credit for. I used to be that person. I used to be one of a few people who are asking different kinds of questions and challenging people to think about the work that they do and to think about how difficult it is to actually do their jobs and to just not be so, what's the word I'm looking for, but to not be so enamored with your
Mhm.
leaders and to see
Mhm.
them as human beings who
Mhm.
also have impossible jobs because I think that's a part of the mystique that many CEOs and companies kind of rely on. They navigate in this murky world of how difficult it is to do these things, but they don't really give people the freedom to kind of make mistakes. And so all of that to say, I think what we're seeing right now is a lot of anger in response to just the ticky tack and the punches that they've been getting in the mainstream media. But I think a lot of it is also just in response to this forced softness that they were forced to adopt since 2000 with respect to diversity and, sensitivity to working families and remote work. I want to play a clip, and this is from the CEO of JP Morgan. His name is Jamie Dimon. We've mentioned Jamie Dimon maybe at least 3 to 5
He's a
times on our
character.
podcast. If you don't know who he is, just know that he is in many ways, like I'm thinking back to my old grad school days. Who's a GE? Jack
Welsh.
Welch, who
Hmm.
was like the CEO's CEO
Oh, yeah.
that sets the tone for other CEOs. And so rest assured, even if you don't know who he is, the CEO that you work for knows who he is and takes cues from him. I'm also going to say that there's a little bit of a warning here. He uses some foul language, but this is leaked audio from what I would imagine is an internal call. He's talking to employees, and he is referring to just his response to the general sort of vibe that's happening right now. So this is Jamie Dimon leaked audio. Um, Give it a couple minutes here, but this is what he said.
Fucking Zoom, and you were doing the following, okay? Looking at your mail, sending texts to each other about what an asshole the other person is, okay? Not paying attention, not reading your stuff, and if you don't think that slows down efficiency, creativity, creates rudeness and stuff, it does, okay? And when I found out that people are doing that, you don't do that in my goddamn meetings. You go to a meeting with me, you got my attention, you got my focus. I don't bring my goddamn phone. I'm not sending texts to people, okay? It simply doesn't work. And it doesn't work for creativity. It slows down decision making. And don't give me the shit that work from home Friday works. I call a lot of people on Friday. There's not a goddamn person to get a hold of. But here are the problems, okay? And they are substantial, okay? Which is the young generation is being damaged by this. That means they may or may not be on your particular staff, but they are being left behind. They're being left behind socially, ideas, meeting people. In fact, my guess is most of you live in communities a hell of a lot less diverse than this room. Every area should be looking to be 10% more efficient. If I was running a department of 100 people, I guarantee you, if I wanted to, I could run it with 90 and be more efficient. I guarantee you, I could do it in my sleep. And the notion, these bureaucracies, I need more people, I can't get it done. No, because you're filling out requests that don't need to be done. Your people are going to meetings they don't need to go to. Someone told me to approve some of his wealth management that they had to go to 14 committees. I am dying to get the name of the 14 committees. And I feel like firing 14 chairmen of committees. I can't stand it anymore. Now, you have a choice. You don't.
He then goes on to say, you have a choice. You don't have to work for JP Morgan. The company was not built on this lackadaisical, friendly tone and attitude, like basically take it or leave it. Thoughts? I've got several. Let me start.
How you gonna ask me and then take
Well,
my
because I
spot? Go
thought
ahead.
you
Go
looked a little
ahead.
shell shocked. He's not
I
he's not
didn't
wrong.
mean. y-
He's not wrong. And I am actually more in favor of this version of leadership where like finally they're being honest. Like
Yes.
this isn't a matter of saying, employees are the number one asset. And if you work for us, you're like family. They're basically saying, F that.
We pay you
We pay
for your
you. I
job.
expect you to be here. I expect you to sacrifice your everything, just like I have. I mean, in that same clip or during that same, I think towards the latter end, I cut it off because I think the point was very clear. But he started talking about, he was like, I'm working 7 days a week. I don't care about anybody, doing. And he just went off. And I just think that when he speaks, and the same was true with, this man can move interest rates. He can set the tone for corporate culture and leadership. All of them are doing this.
Hmm.
All of them are doing this. And when he starts to talk like this openly, I can assure you other CEOs adopt that mindset. And I am just warning every single person who's working for a publicly traded company, even if it's private, to just tighten up.
Listen,
Because the days of sitting back and being able to take advantage of your unlimited vacation and assuming that you're good because you've got stock options and all that stuff, like those days are pretty much over. Like these guys are over it. If you are not producing, I'm telling you right now, above and beyond whatever they've asked you to do, no excuses, and like doing it with a smile on your face, you are likely at risk.
And so are they, right?
Yes.
Like some of this turnover is because they are also on the chopping block. These are war times in the world of business. At
Yes.
the end of the day, if you're not doing what they expected you to do, if you're not filling your side of the equation that determines your salary and on all of the costs related to having you at that company, then you're gone. And the difference is with CEOs, they know that going in.
Yes.
They negotiate as if they're temporary. They have exit strategies and plans and golden parachutes baked into their contract. And we need to do something similar.
Correct.
You need to negotiate as if your job is temporary. You don't need to leave any money on the table. If there's a signing bonus, a relocation, you need to not anticipate that anything is too long-term or sustainable. If you're looking to buy a house, you need to make sure that you can afford it, whether or not that salary is there.
Correct.
Because it is all temporary, even at the highest levels. A third of CEOs leave their position within 3 years. Sometimes that's voluntary, sometimes that's involuntary. And so if they're coming for the leaders, what makes you think they're not going to come for you?
If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. Some jobs are good. A few are even great, but all jobs are temporary.
Period.
And this is what these people are saying. And this is the world that we're in. And so when you hear them say efficiency over and over again, efficiency, there was an article 3 weeks ago, the Starbucks CEO, I want to say they said he made, I'm looking at my notes. This was according to Bloomberg, the Starbucks CEO, who I want to say was hired less than a year ago or right around a year, made $96 million in his first 4 months. This was according to Bloomberg. And again, I remember a time where people would be like up in arms and upset about that. Now they're just like, yep, he made 96 million. And in the same breath said layoffs are looming. We need to get back to the old way of doing things. And, we're probably going to start laying off people and looking for efficiencies. That's coded language for AI is going to replace things. And I'm telling you, it's even worse because now we've had a couple of years to test it out. I know we've embraced AI and the efficiencies that it brings on in our everyday lives and in our business. I'm telling you, these companies, and we normally, offline, we talk about these things. It normally takes around 2 to 3 years. And we're right at that 3rd year mark where there are enough companies just outside of the heart of the tech industry who have tested out some of these technologies. They figured out ways to do it. People are far more accustomed to it. It's also very clear who has not adopted these things. And those are the people that they're coming for. If you don't know how to use these things, if it's not on your resume, if you're not a highly skilled, technologically advanced employee, these are going to be really, really tough times. And I would just flat out say the clock is ticking. So to your point, we need to be thinking like CEOs. We need to be walking in with an end in mind. And
walking out with your dignity intact.
Absolutely.
There are so many CEOs that have led companies into failure, have managed the decline, as we used to call it. That was the way of like adding some gloss to managing a loss, where it's like, I managed the decline. I made sure that it hit all the milestones that we were looking to expect. And then they're still able to get another job with another signing bonus, with another fat check, with another exit. And all it took was just a matter of like knowing that going in. And I still see people setting themselves up for like the dream company, the dream job. My heart goes out to people who have been looking for a long time and then they finally find that relief of someone saying yes. But you still need to have that chip on your shoulder. This is not a romance.
Yeah.
This is not a movie with a happy ending. This is corporate America. This is capitalism. And the only role of a company is to make money.
Yeah.
That's what they're designed to do.
Yeah.
They're not designed to give you livelihood and fulfillment and happiness. That's what government and community and all of the other institutions that we have. Companies are just there to make money.
Yeah, yeah. So these are the times that we're in. Our hope is that we are all kind of walking into our jobs in this new year and in this new environment with this tone in mind. Don't act like you didn't see it. Don't act like you didn't hear it. Just acknowledge it, play the game, and try not to fall too in love with where you are because these are temporary times. So
Temporary times.
yeah. All right.
All right. Last topic. Speaking of love and romance. We're going to talk about diamonds because for nearly a century, almost 100 years, the diamond industry has sold us this dream, which is a diamond is
A girl's best
A
friend
girl's best friend.
and
A
a
diamond is forever. All the things. But what happens when people stop believing that? Because
yeah.
that's what's happening right now. Right now, the diamond industry is in crisis. Diamond prices have dropped 35 to 40% in just 2 years. And De Beers, which is the company that controlled the diamond market for all these decades, has been forced to lower their prices just to compete. Even luxury buyers are moving away from buying natural diamonds, and wedding ring sales are down because people are getting married and they just don't need a diamond.
Yeah.
So the industry is struggling with how to keep diamonds relevant, but there are these other huge threats that are working against all of their efforts. So the first one is lab grown diamonds. Now, lab grown diamonds have changed the game. In the past, only real diamonds came from deep in the earth, but now lab grown diamonds are identical in quality. They cost 75% less and they're ethically produced.
Impossible diamonds. These beyond diamonds. Okay.
And 10 years ago, lab grown diamonds were barely on the market, but today they make up almost 50%, 49% of engagement ring sales. Because if you can get the exact same thing for a fraction of the price, why would you pay more?
Yeah.
And this is a great time to remind people that a diamond ain't nothing but a rock. Like
That's
it's a rock that we've decided
That's it.
that was, you know what I'm saying? So like it's
a
not
polished rock.
it's not exactly the same as the Impossible Burger because like cows are real. A rock is just a rock, right? The other thing that's threatening their efforts is that younger generations just aren't as obsessed with engagement rings as past generations were. More couples are willing to spend that same money on travel, homes, investments, instead of buying expensive jewelry. And a reminder that the tradition of an engagement ring was actually created by De Beers in the 1940s.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Like, and then the last thing was, diamonds were always perceived scarcity. Like there was never a shortage on rocks that can be shined up and put into rings. But De Beers
made you believe
yes, they
that
controlled
it
the
was
supply, the
so
marketing.
that they could control the narrative of how
Exactly.
valuable and rare these gems are.
Yeah.
And as a result, justify charging people thousands, in some cases millions of dollars for pretty shiny rocks.
Yes. And now that lab grown diamonds have kind of exposed the truth that diamonds were never rare and that you can get the same diamond without all this scarcity marketing or genocide in African countries. Like you can just go buy one. The demand for mined diamonds is declining. Like nobody wants you to go dig. Like, why would you do that?
I would love to do like an expose or some bit of an analysis over families that are led by couples that have maybe been together for the last 30 or 40 years. And then you can go back and just basically do the math and say, all right, so you saved up, I forget what that rule of thumb is. It's
3
like
months.
3 months of earnings to buy this ring. And it's now on your wife's, finger, and it's been sitting there, collecting bacteria and all kinds of grime from years of
memories
use.
and
Okay.
sentimentality.
But I would love to see, what the actual value of that would have been if you had invested it in the stock market.
Here you go.
No, I'm just saying,
No,
this is
you have
what
a valid
opportunity
point.
cost is. I would love to see what that is. And the reason for that is because culturally, we have this habit of calling or trying to justify really expensive purchases and calling them investments. And it's a fascinating thing. And this is one of those really great examples of how it's like, well, is it an investment? Like, oh, well, do they actually increase in value over time? What does the resale market look like? And so, yeah, I think, the key here is just to be willing to break free, no different from what we were saying earlier with respect to Disney. I mean, this is one of those lingering things that represent a huge chunk of people's financial lives, right? You save up to go on a Disney vacation. You save up
for the ring
to buy a ring as if it is a literal representation of the love and your ability to provide and to partner with whoever this person is. And it's all just made up.
Yes.
It's all just made up. You don't actually have to do any of this stuff. You know what I mean? These are things that we just decide to do culturally because this is, a campaign that someone decided to, mark as actually true one day. And so we just have to be willing to break free. And I think when you do that, you find a straight line and your own sort of efficient path forward. Now, having said that, the diamond industry is fighting back. And so there are a couple of things that they're doing to try to get your attention. aside from just like general marketing, but one, they are trying to artificially inflate the price of diamonds. So they're basically withdrawing or, putting a cap on supply. And so by literally trying to make them a bit harder
More
to
rare.
find, it's like, oh, well, you got to go here to get it or to see it, those kinds of things. Again, they're rocks, dude. Like they're just polished rocks, and they are collecting and holding on to these rocks because, they know that by always making them generally available, it erodes the narrative that diamonds are actually rare. And it's funny because our son actually asked me that question the other day. And as I was trying to explain what rare meant, and I was like, you know what though? Like, are they? Because they're literally in every mall. Like, how rare could this thing be if it's in every mall? And there are separate brick and mortar stores with there are diamonds everywhere.
They're in pawn shops.
They're everywhere,
They're
dude.
in Sam's Club.
There's nothing rare about
Costco.
diamonds.
There's Macy's.
Yeah.
Like everybody sells diamonds. Now, granted, there's a scale of quality, the 5 Cs or whatever, that is
Okay.
also
But
made
they're
up.
everywhere.
But like they're everywhere.
They're not
And
like, just stop and think about that.
yeah,
Like,
they don't
they're
have like
not rare.
parents. It's not like an endangered rock species. You can just create them in a lab, which is what people are doing. Where
Yeah.
it's like you can, like, if I were getting married today, I would not want my fiance to buy me a mined diamond. That to me would
Well,
feel
So there was that attempt too, right? So, and that was on the opposite side of things. There was the sort of attempt to show what really goes on and talk about the safety of the mine workers. And I would say, by all measures, that had a bit of an impact. I don't know that it had a mass impact. I know for Black people who were particularly interested in how African countries are being exploited, I think there was a bit of an interest there, and as a result, a bit of a break from diamonds. And what I saw, at least in several of the people that I know, they just were not interested in diamonds at all, and they were far more interested in getting something that had some type of cultural value that they just thought was beautiful, and they just went with that. I know couples who just decided to skip it altogether. I know couples who decided to get matching tattoos. So there are all these other ways that I know our generation or corners of our generation have decided to do it. But in terms of messaging, one of the other things that the diamond industry is doing is, and I'm saying this because I think we need to start expecting to see more of these kinds of things, is propaganda around how it is.
an
I'm calling it
investment.
propaganda, but
It is.
it's marketing. It's like, well, actually, you start to see it pop up with gold every now and then too. Like, oh, is it time? Is gold gonna, because the U.S. currency is gonna fall apart and it's all about gold? The same thing with diamonds. Like, oh, they are actually an investment, and
Yeah.
studies have shown that over time, blah, freaking blah. Look, it's a rock. It's just a rock. And I mean that for anyone who was thinking about getting married. Put that $10, $15, $20,000 elsewhere.
Any athletes,
Don't do it.
any rappers.
Don't do it.
You want to ice out a chain? Have them grow the diamonds. They look the exact same. It is the same thing.
No one cares.
It is the exact same thing. Like, it is the same thing, and no one cares. Save your money.
Save your money.
Save your money.
Get
and
rid of
even
it.
before lab mined diamonds, lab created, lab grown, whatever they're called, were a thing. Even when we bought our own wedding rings, like, my cousin is a certified gemologist. We went through her. She sourced the diamonds directly. We were not trying to do no upsell, like pay a markup, buying it from Tiffany's or Zales. Like, when we got our rings appraised, we had already paid the bare minimum for them because they didn't have all this markup, but then they appraised for twice as much. And it's like, but that's just value on paper. Unless somebody's willing to pay for it, it's not worth that. And that's how you should think about. I know.
You know what I love? I wear this. And I had somebody ask me about it, like, what's with the rubber ring? And I was like, because I cook a lot and I wash my hands a lot, and so I don't
He
get
has one in so many colors.
Gunk in my
Designed
ring.
him a beautiful ring, and he wears that.
Yeah.
Rubber silicone thing, and they are very comfortable. And now they make them nice.
I should sell it. Get a fake one, pocket the money.
You should
invest it, and then just give updates on the appraised value of my ring versus the stock market, and then we'll be living examples of taking our own advice.
I like that.
Okay.
All right.
You can go first.
All right. So, final thought.
Yours is worth more than mine.
It is. Final thoughts. So, I think my thought was, like, if nostalgia, this idea of nostalgia goes away, then what comes next? Because to your point, for decades, nostalgia has been this currency. It's the thing that keeps us coming back to certain brands, the same experiences, the same traditions, because it feels so safe and familiar. And that currency of nostalgia is losing value. People aren't just blindly accepting that Disney is the only acceptable family vacation. They're not proving that diamonds are the only way to show love. They're not thinking that corporate loyalty is the only path to financial success. They're looking at what the price of these things is literally, but also what they cost, both emotionally, psychologically,
Yeah.
financially, and asking themselves, is this actually worth it? And we have wanted people to like stop and ask that question for the last 10 years. And so I'm happy to see that it is fading, but I'm also really curious about what takes its place. And in my mind, I think it's more like autonomy. Maybe it's just the idea that people have the ability to choose what holds meaning for them instead of just inheriting all of these ideas from the television and ad spend. Maybe it's personalization, where now instead of buying mass produced products and symbols, you actually create something that's specifically for you. And, maybe it's intentionality, another thing that we preach all the time, where you're just actually getting something because you love it. You're making a conscious choice. You're being very intentional about how you spend your money, what you support, what signals you give. And that would be cool too.
Yeah.
I don't think the world is getting less magical or safe or happy because we're questioning tradition. I think it's actually getting more interesting because for the first time, we're all playing a role in creating what's what.
Yeah.
And that to me is like a true democracy. That's what it's supposed to be like.
I think that's actually always been the case, right? Whenever one tradition is eroded or destroyed, it's typically replaced by another. And so I'm curious to see what those things are. But I do think that, even if we go down the list of the specific examples that we gave, I think what we're starting to see is instead of manufactured magic, we're seeing people very similar to our son and even us to a certain extent being far more interested in the natural world, being far more interested in exploring parks and being outside and being outdoors because one, it's significantly less expensive, but we also know that it's just better for you. But it's not manufactured. It's not clinging on to a world that no longer exists anymore. I think if we're talking about something like even traditional work, we're also starting to see the erosion of that old model. And we're starting to see a propping up of people realizing that there are other things that they can do to fulfill them. There are other ways that they can define themselves. There are other ways that they can certainly earn an income. And you're starting to see a lot more people kind of figuring out their own combination of ways to do that and to find this better or different balance of work in their life. And even when we talk about diamonds, very similar to what I said, you're starting to see people say, actually, no, I don't have to do that. It is just a rock. And by the way, let me give you all the problems with the industry that I don't want to be a part of. And so I think the invitation is there for a lot of people to take that kind of lens, whether it's nostalgia, whether it's tradition, whatever it is that you want to call it, and just use your own critical thinking and your own family's needs, wants, and desires instead of having these decisions being made for you in the name of tradition, breaking free and not only making good decisions for yourself, but likely saving a bunch of money along the way. I think that's what we're inviting people to do. And hopefully this episode helps to nudge them a little closer to whatever that looks like for them.
Yes. Talk to your spouses and your friends about these topics.
Yeah,
I want
it's
to
okay
hear.
to just,
Yeah, just throw it out there.
yeah, and because it's a long list, you could say the same thing from weddings to the way that you should be raising a child, and or all the things that you want to buy just preparing for a child. Like some of these things we're just not even thinking about. We just feel like you have to have it,
Yep.
and we don't really take enough stock of how much these things actually cost us.
Yes.
So, I don't think we intended on there being a common theme, but there's a theme
I
there.
did.
We need to be okay. Well, good. Look at you.
Yeah, this
Connecting
wasn't a
dots.
random quick dip. This was like a trio, like what do you call them? Like a sampler
Trio.
of like guac, salsa, and queso.
You're making me hungry.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of the Rich and Regular podcast. Speaking of making you think and saving you money, if you like what you heard, let us know by leaving a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast platform or drop a comment below. Y'all going to Disney this summer? You buying diamonds? You want to be a CEO? We'd love to hear about it. Let us know, and we will see y'all next week.
Man, I went to Jamaica not too long ago. You just made me think. we'd stop for lunch somewhere, and on the side of the road there was a store, a jewelry store. They had diamonds in that store.
Oh, yeah.
Like just random.
They sell them on cruises, at docks.
Yeah,
Diamonds are everywhere.
Ridiculous.
If you like videos like this and want to see more, make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications.